Hello friends, it sounds like the plot of a high-octane action thriller, but it's real. A tense and dangerous confrontation has erupted between the Iranian and U.S. navies in the Gulf of Oman. It happened fast, it was sharp, and it left behind far more questions than answers. Was it an accident, a show of strength, or a test run for something much bigger? What pushed Iran to take such a bold step, and how will the U.S. respond? But before we dive in, make sure to subscribe to the channel. We bring you the most urgent global updates, exclusive conflict insights, and accurate forecasts you won't find elsewhere. The Gulf of Oman has long mirrored the volatility of the Middle East, and in these waters, nothing happens by chance. On July 22nd, a dramatic episode unfolded that some are already calling the most provocative encounter in recent months. According to Tehran, an Iranian military helicopter intercepted the U.S. destroyer USS Fitzgerald after it entered a disputed maritime zone. The aircraft hovered above the destroyer's deck, issued a direct warning via radio, and forced the American vessel to change course. It all happened quickly, but the atmosphere was electric. One misstep and shots could have been fired. While the US has remained silent, Iranian sources describe the encounter in almost combat-like terms. The Iranian pilot acted decisively, maintaining a threatening position over the destroyer and transmitting orders through an encrypted channel. When the Americans allegedly threatened to shoot down the helicopter, Iran's air defense systems intervened, broadcasting a stark warning. The aircraft was under their protection, and any hostile action would be treated as an act of war. What followed was silence. The Fitzgerald altered its route, slowly moving south, away from the contested area. This wasn't just a tactical maneuver, it was a message. Iran is showing it can control the airspace and waters it claims, and more importantly, that it's willing to defend those claims not with rhetoric, but with action. What may seem like a localized incident actually carries enormous symbolic and strategic weight. So far, Washington has offered no comment, no statement, no denial. That silence speaks volumes. The Pentagon likely needs time to assess, to de-escalate. A direct confrontation with Iran right now would be dangerous and unpredictable. The US is already juggling rising tensions with China, the war in Ukraine, unrest in Israel, and an upcoming election cycle. But make no mistake, there will be a response. It may not come in the form of military retaliation. The US might opt for diplomatic pressure, tougher sanctions, or, as it has in the past, cyber attacks targeting Iran's critical infrastructure. Covert operations are also a possibility. One thing is certain, Washington is not in the habit of ignoring challenges to its military presence, but it will likely choose the time and method that minimizes risk while maximizing impact. The Iran-US rivalry spans decades, fueled by mistrust, geopolitical clashes, and constant provocations. It began with the 1979 Islamic Revolution, which shattered diplomatic relations. Since then, the two countries have exchanged blows, both literal and symbolic, from the US embassy hostage crisis to accusations of terrorism, sanctions, and Iran's shadowy nuclear ambitions. These tensions are especially pronounced in the Persian and Oman Gulfs, arteries for global oil transport and arenas for strategic dominance. Iran regularly conducts military drills, expands its naval fleet, and develops drones and missile systems. The US, in turn, maintains a powerful military footprint in the region, with aircraft carriers and bases in Qatar, Bahrain, and the UAE. Encounters between ships and aircraft here aren't routine. They're calculated moves on a geopolitical chessboard. The Gulf of Oman is one of the most sensitive choke points in the world, with nearly 30% of global oil shipments passing through. Even a brief skirmish could send markets into a tailspin, trigger economic turbulence, and destabilize the region. The USS Fitzgerald incident isn't isolated. It's part of a larger narrative. A single helicopter flyover nearly escalated into a global diplomatic crisis. Both sides are exercising restraint, for now. But the pressure is rising. Iran appears more willing than ever to push boundaries. The US, true to form, is gathering leverage and waiting for the right moment to strike back. What's happening in the Gulf is more than a standoff. It's a symptom of something deeper, a complete breakdown of trust between two old adversaries, each convinced of their own moral high ground. When helicopters and warships become tools of diplomacy, it means threats have replaced dialogue. And that's exactly what we're witnessing. Aggressive rhetoric backed by real action at sea and in the sky. This clash unfolded in a confined, volatile space where any wrong move could have been catastrophic. Both sides operated under conditions where hesitation or miscommunication might have triggered open conflict. When military forces operate at high alert and fingers hover over triggers, it's often seconds, not strategy, that determine the outcome. That this ended without gunfire is a stroke of luck. Remarkably, the incident occurred just as the world's focus was fixed on Ukraine and Taiwan. Had it gone unnoticed, it might have been dismissed as a minor maritime standoff, but its implications are far-reaching. Regional powers are increasingly willing to challenge global ones, and Iran is one of the few doing it brazenly, publicly, and unapologetically. American presence in the region is perceived differently by different actors. To US allies, it's a security guarantee. To Iran and its sympathizers, it's a threat. American warships, even on patrol, often skirt areas Tehran considers strategic. Where Washington sees international waters, Tehran sees encroachment. And that's a recipe for constant friction. Incidents like the Fitzgerald encounter aren't rare, but in today's charged climate, they take on outsized importance. The region is already on edge, with assassinations of Iranian officials, cyber attacks, and sabotage operations escalating. One more warning flyover could be the final spark. In such a scenario, old agreements and red lines would quickly become irrelevant. As politicians remain tight-lipped, the military speaks through action. Iran's response was swift and coordinated. A helicopter in the sky, air defense on standby, and the destroyer pulling away. It wasn't spontaneous, it was rehearsed. And that implies we'll likely see more of the same, especially if US naval activity near Iranian waters continues. The question is, how far is each side willing to go? On the other hand, pressure never flows in just one direction. The US is undoubtedly recalculating its options, reinforcing its presence, deploying new ships, or conducting joint exercises with regional allies are all likely responses, not just to wave the flag, but to reset the balance of power. The real question is whether that balance can prevent a full-scale crisis. The US-Iran relationship has become a self-perpetuating cycle. Each new flare-up deepens mutual suspicion. Every attempt at dialogue crashes into entrenched distrust, and any concession is seen as weakness. That's why even minor incidents, like this one, matter. They show just how fragile the peace really is. Iran, for its part, uses moments like these to rally internal support. By standing up to the US, Tehran signals to its people that it remains defiant in the face of pressure. It's a strategic show of strength aimed not just outward, but inward, reinforcing national pride and political unity. Meanwhile, the Gulf of Oman remains a flashpoint. Its surface may be calm, but beneath lies a seething mix of decades-old rivalries, power plays, and unresolved tensions. And no matter how many times leaders speak of de-escalation, the truth is this: all it takes is one wrong move, and the next explosion won't be a warning shot. It will be war, and war in this region wouldn't stay contained. A single escalation between Iran and the United States could pull in allies, provoke retaliatory strikes, ignite proxy battles, and destabilize global energy markets overnight. The Gulf of Oman is not just a strategic corridor, it's a powder keg with too many open flames nearby. Already, regional actors are watching closely. Israel, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and others are recalibrating their security doctrines. A US-Iran clash, even if limited, would force a realignment of alliances, potentially reshuffling the entire balance of power across the Middle East. Nations that have cautiously engaged both Washington and Tehran may soon be forced to choose sides. For Iran, such moments serve a dual purpose. On the surface, they project power abroad, but equally important is the domestic impact. In a time of economic hardship, sanctions, and social tension, Tehran uses foreign pressure as a unifying force. Confronting a foreign adversary distracts from internal dissent and reinforces a national narrative of resilience against Western interference. The United States, meanwhile, is walking a tightrope. It cannot appear weak, especially in an election year when foreign policy is under scrutiny. Yet, it also knows the costs of miscalculation. An all-out conflict with Iran would drain resources, stretch military commitments, and potentially drag US forces into another prolonged engagement in the Middle East, precisely when Washington seeks to pivot toward the Indo-Pacific and domestic priorities. That's why, behind the scenes, there's likely a flurry of diplomatic activity, quiet talks with regional partners, coded messages passed through intermediaries, intelligence assessments updated hour by hour. The US may remain silent publicly, but its strategic apparatus is anything but idle. For now, the situation hangs in delicate balance. Both sides have shown their hands, measured aggression, calculated restraint, but, as history has often shown, the most dangerous moment is when no one wants war, yet everyone prepares for it. The question that now looms: which side will blink first? Will diplomacy find a narrow path forward, or will another incident push the region past the point of no return? In the coming days, what the world sees on the surface, statements, naval movements, sanctions, will only be half the story. The real test will be whether leaders in Tehran and Washington can keep control of the undercurrents they've set in motion. Because once a storm breaks in the Gulf, it won't stop at the shoreline. If you want to stay ahead of the curve with real-time updates, in-depth analysis, and expert insights on global flashpoints like this one, make sure to subscribe. This is just the beginning.